independent from Japan and united. And so this is a way to address this unanswered Korea question while putting a lot more diplomatic and political pressure on North Korea and China.
Thank you. So the closest I've seen to that, an idea like that, which would, as I understand it, delegitimize the government in Pyongyang as a representative of Korean people on the Korean Peninsula, is the idea that has floated in the Council on Foreign Relations report, and I've seen it elsewhere, which is to consider, in a sense, if all else fails, denying the DPRK membership in the United Nations and the General Assembly, to sort of delegitimize the government, as, but have the international community do it instead of one country denying it recognition. And so I suppose that can be thought about. Right now, I would like generally people who think about policy to be thinking about ways of getting engagement to proceed in a reasonable way rather than disengagement. If you think about delegitimizing the DPRK, that's not way far away from where they are now. I mean, they are the pariah state in the international community right at this moment, and they know it, and they are thriving. So if you don't do anything in terms of impacting their life, and their life goes on because essentially Beijing ensures that it does, notwithstanding what the rest of the international community does, and I'm not sure how much one would have accomplished. But it still is a possibility.
Thank you. Peter, get the microphone here.
I would like to raise a little different issue. Recently, Korea is going through a kind of a turmoil as a result of Lady Choi Soon-sil, who has been spreading influence, including tremendous financial problems, and the opposition parties are telling Park Geun-hye to resign, and there has been massive demonstrations going on in Korea. This is not directly related to our present conference, but I'm concerned, and I want to hear from you or other panelists about the relationship between the U.S. policy toward North Korea. And you mentioned briefly about the next year's election, but we have a much urgent issue with us now. And if the leftist government comes out, they might as well accomplish what Kim Dae-jung tried to, make Korea, together with the North Korean leaders, kind of together government. I can't think of a right word right now. So, are we going to pursue with President Park Geun-hye, who has been singing the same song with President Obama and the U.S. policymakers? That has been great so far, and we still have a problem, even so. But now I'm concerned that we are getting into a real difficulty, depending on what goes on next couple of months. Thank you very much. I would like to hear your comments.
Thank you. I think prudence and wisdom on my part is to stay far away from domestic politics in the ROK right now. I would say that I absolutely do believe, however, that the ultimate election in the ROK will bear in a very substantial way the outcome of that election on what sorts of policies can be pursued to deal with the DPRK. So I think that connection is real. What is happening now and the difficulties that the president is having in the ROK is not something I think I can usefully comment on. So I'm going to let it go.
Well, Master Tamuchi, I was sort of stunned to hear you say you did not know anything about HEU program while you were negotiating such a successful reframing. And I don't remember you ever mentioned HEU either, or even HEUCAS, of course. But in that connection, you also mentioned distrust. The degree of extent of distrust between DPRK and the US is such high that they still do not really trust or take whatever we say, Washington says. They don't take it its face value. Now, with respect to the motivation for North Koreans to pursue the other path of developing nuclear weapons by way of enrichment, which Bush administration later claimed covered all kinds of programs, although it did not specify the term HEU program in that sense. My point is, whether North Koreans still could not trust the United States, even after they signed the agreed framework, which they liked it, they welcomed it, and Kim Seok-jul become a hero as a result of that. And I heard the largest commendations from North Korean officials of their negotiations afterwards. Now, was it because they still could not trust the United States and they could not rely on what the terms provided? For example, targeted completion of the light water reactor projects. And they said, well, you got to be done in 2003, and you have not done anything. And they were complaining about that. And Chuck Cartman would explain to them, you got to remember, this is only target date, that we tried to do it by that time, but we did not promise you we're going to do it by that time. That's one question. Another thing is, you mentioned preemption. Well, it's international lawful and all that, but the problem with that is not only the incomplete capability of taking out all the nuclear arsenals in North Korea, but more than that, how are you going to judge? You're going to need some evidence, clear evidence, that they are about to attack you with their nuclear weapons. So how are you going to get that? And how do you depend on it? Another thing is the consequences of the preemption in terms of damage to South Korea and even to the United States. Do you consider that also when you do it? Lastly, I'll come back to your point of needing for the next administration to start seeking, talking the talks. Again, Washington atmosphere has been for the past 20 years, especially after what it perceived as North Korean breaking away or unkept promises that they made in terms of denuclearization. And there is no atmosphere, no support in this town, either in Congress or in the media or politicians or general people, population, that would support kind of a dialogue that you and some of the people, it's really great to have someone like you keep engaging in this issue, very important, because people should kind of learn from your experience. And how it's going to turn around, and again, whether when you make a recommendation to the next administration, you're going to make a different set of recommendations depending on who gets elected tonight. One for Clinton, one for Trump. How that can vary.
Thank you. So on the first question, you were apparently shocked or stunned that when I was negotiating with the North Koreans in 1993 and 94 that I did not know that they were at the same time negotiating with Islamabad, or at least with AQ Khan, for uranium enrichment centrifuge, gas centrifuge technology. Right at this moment, I still don't know that. In other words, what I'm telling you is there came a time when I did discover that, from our intelligence community, that there was this ongoing exchange and transfer from Islamabad to the DPRK. But that, for me, came, and I, by the way, never gave up my security clearances. I kept them. So this is based on, even with full access, I did not know about this until, I think the safe thing for me to say is after 1996. So, and the agreed framework was 1994. So I don't, not only did I not know about it, but I am virtually certain neither did anybody else within the American administration know about it in 1994. And so, and if you were to tell me that you had evidence that the contacts were happening then, I could easily believe you and say, well, we missed it. Wouldn't be the first time that they missed something. The deterrence question and the preemption question, and how could we be confident that we knew that we know we're going to be attacked? How could we know? How could there be the adequate basis for preemption? Well, it's a very high bar, right? It's very hard, especially when you're talking about nuclear weapons. This is not a bunch of militia on your border, and the question is, do you call in an airstrike? This is the proposition here, the scenario we're talking about is that a country, the DPRK, is going to launch a nuclear strike with missiles at the United States of America or its allies, Republic of Korea and Japan, and we are going to launch an attack on them in advance to decrease the damage that they would do by such a strike. Well, it's hard to get that information in advance. Not impossible, knowing something about the American intelligence community after over 20 years of being in the US government, but it's hard, and we are capable of getting it wrong. And I have been part of getting it wrong more than once. So I don't say this easily, though. You know, when you take a job in the administration, and I've done this a number of times, raised my hand and took an oath, you swear to protect the United States of America from enemies, foreign and domestic. So you take an oath, and I would say, I said a few minutes ago, not only would I support, I would expect, I would insist on preemption if we had that high confidence. If you don't, then it's not a good idea. It occurs to me that Larry's questioned whether we could actually succeed in a preemptive strike. Well, what your capability is aimed at reducing the enemy's capability. It doesn't mean that you completely are confident you're going to hit every mobile missile, every submarine they may have been able to deploy. You may not. But if you think you're going to be struck, you can do serious damage. And unlike other people here, and I think there are people in this room who do not believe the American assurance, once we are vulnerable to attack by the North Koreans, the assurance that we give in our extended deterrent assurance in our alliance context to Japan and the Republic of Korea. I spent over 21 years in the US government, and I believe us. I believe we will fulfill our alliance responsibilities. We know what's at risk here. Remember, and I know Joe at least remembers, when the Chinese said you won't trade Los Angeles for Taipei, Well, yes, we will. I'm not enthusiastic about the prospect. I have family there. But that is what we sign up for. So, those who would question this, I warn them to be careful. And don't ever assume that the United States will fail to fulfill its obligations. It would be a mistake, in my view.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's give Ambassador Baruch.
Thank you so much.
You verified this?
I did. Thank you.
Spelling is correct?
It is.
And then this is our tennis.
I do.
That's wonderful. Okay, we get done with the break.